Hey everyone, I'm LeystTV, and today I have the pleasure of doing this amazing interview. So first and foremost, thank you to the both of you for being here and doing the interview. For those who may not know who you are, could you please tell a bit about yourselves and what you do at Blizzard?
Sure, yeah. I'll go first. So my name's Danny. I am the lead quest designer on the War Within expansion. What I do is I oversee the quest team and I help direct the vision of what our questing experience is like. So this involves not only like our campaign quests, but any of the side local stories, as well as like any of our larger end game faction features that kind of appear on the zones.
And I'm Tina. I'm an associate art director on World of Warcraft. And, my focus is just, broadly on the art of the game, right? The world building, the characters, yeah, all of those pieces.
First up, I have some questions about world building and some of the zones. In the War Within, we have 4 zones that are quite different. It's not something we have seen before, at least not to this extent. We have Isle of Dorn at the top, which is the zone we had the opportunity to test, followed by the Ringing Deeps, and then Hallowfall, and finally Askahad at the bottom. What were some of the challenges and solutions in making all the zones flow so seamlessly?
Yeah, so one of the things that was important to us was to make the world feel like it was connected, and that is something that is challenging when they are underground. So in that initial world building, we were like, okay, well, how do we do this? Do we stack them on top of each other? That seems like it might, make things difficult for the player experience. So we decided, well, Isle of Dorn, that definitely needs to be on top, and you go underneath that landmass. So that was one where you have the coreway that the Earthen built, this huge, Titan coreway that actually would lead to the center of the Earth, if you will, or center of Azeroth. And through that, you have a way where you navigate through using the same technology of getting to Zerlat Caverns through a pathway in it that then brings you to the landmass of the underground zones. We built them in a bit of like a spiral stagger so that when you open the map, when you're down there, you still are able to see, all of the world quests and everything. In the final map, you will be able to see the Isle of Dorn as well as your 3 zones all laid out in one big continent map. So, really thinking about that player experience in mind. In terms of the variety and the depth there, going underground was just like a very, it's when you go to a type of space that's very untraditional, that opens a lot of doors in terms of the fantasy, right? So that was very fun and exciting to us.
What were some of the challenges you had to overcome so it doesn't feel so enclosed? Because, like you said, it is underground, and considering 3 out of the 4 zones are underground, what kind of things did you like? Yeah.
Yeah, one of the big things that was important to us was still creating a sense of atmosphere and a lot of space. So, at the beginning, we're like, oh, we need to raise these ceilings higher. We need to create the layers of rock overhead that then goes into this idea, like, say, in the Ringing Deeps, of light coming, shining through from the open caverns overhead into these areas of pools of greenery, too. Um, we have little like clouds placed around the underground zones as well to really give that sense of space. And then Hallowfall, while it is underground, I will say that that one feels quite open and outdoor. You get this ocean that feels almost like an infinite ocean horizon, as well as that crystalline ceiling overhead that simulates that feeling of sky. But then you have the drama of the crystal that shifts from, light to dark within that zone. But then of course in Ashket, it's like, okay, this is the deepest zone. It's full of Nubians. What's that? The fantasy there of the depths of that earth and that experience that players expect when you discover the Empire.
And we also do a lot too with just like the world building down there. Like in Hallowfall, there's like airships that are kind of around, which is a really interesting dynamic to think about that underground. We really try to, like Tina said, utilize that huge ceiling space that we have. We have a lot of creatures flying around as well, and really try to make it feel like even though it is underground, it still feels huge and like it could be something that is above ground too.
I got a question that I just thought of when you mentioned the airships. How did the airships come up below the ground? Because they seem very huge. Is there like an exit, or did they build them, or yeah?
Yeah, that's a good question. Tina, are you familiar with like what kind of inspired the airships?
Pretty pictures? No, okay,
That's
so
fair.
well,
That's fair.
so okay, one of the that was kind of a joke, but really, there's this idea of like where did the Arathi come from? When did they get there? The Hallowfall itself, like I mentioned, there's like the depths of the space that's like across the horizon to, what more could be there? And also within Hallowfall, they have airship construction locations actually as part of the zone. So they do build a lot of the airships actually like in the zone itself. They didn't put them through the core way.
So yeah, while playing the alpha we had access to, I really didn't expect Isle of Dorn to be as huge as it is. Had big open spaces and cool looking architecture. So my question is, what kind of thought process do you go through when designing the zones? Is there like a specific feeling you aim to evoke in players, or is it just what looks really cool?
Yeah, so Isle of Dorn plus Dornagal, the city, right? I think that was a big piece of like how do we want that culture to feel? I think we really wanted to create this distinction of the city, which was a little bit inspired by Ironforge to some degree, like with the idea that, right, Ironforge was inspired by the culture of the Earthen and who they were. So we wanted to create that connection, but up above ground. But still, you get a lot of that, like the Great Forge of, the lava and that element there. And then in the rural areas, we wanted to create the more rustic feeling for the Earthen out there because, they've been away from the Titans for so long. And we did look to a lot of previous Dwarven related stuff in WoW's history. Like it's a little bit reminiscent maybe of some of the Wildhammer stuff in that they're built, in within the earth.
Do you ever like get any real life inspirations when building the zones in the game, or is it everything like from within the game? Like you mentioned, it's from some of the inspiration is from Ironforge. Do you ever like, yeah, get some inspiration from the real world when building the zones?
Oh yeah, it's always just a combination,
Yeah,
right? Of like real world mixed with the previous. Like, how can we make something that feels like a new flavor that has never been explored before?
does the World Soul Saga change the way you approach world building and quest design, considering it will span over 3 whole expansions and not just one?
Yeah, I would definitely say that it does, because we're really thinking about like the story having continuity between these multiple expansions. So it definitely does change things that we have to think about. We want to make sure that we're telling story threads that make sense and they're story threads that can continue on and players can get excited about. But we're also trying to like, use older cultures to excite players who have been playing since the beginning. There's a lot in this expansion that I think is like really exciting to kind of set the ground for what the future of World of Warcraft will be. And like I'm personally really excited just about that opportunity for players to learn, for new players to come in and like learn about these cultures, for old players to come back in and be like, wow, this is so cool. You're finally fleshing out what Earthen are and what Nerubians are. And, we even meet kobolds and we learn more about their culture. So a lot of really cool things that we're trying to do. And, we don't want to just stop with this expansion doing that. Like we do plan to have people carry over going forward as well. So yeah, lots of different things to kind of think about.
How do you ensure that new storylines like the ones in The War Within resonates with longtime players, but still being accessible to newcomers from, let's say, from Dragonflight, or that's moving from Dragonflight to The War Within? Can that be done through quest design, or what kind of approach?
Yeah. Yeah, so what we do through quest design is we really try to explore these cultures. So we have like the main campaign, of course, and that's kind of the larger overarching story, but we have a lot of little side stories that will take you on an adventure through the earthen culture and all these different cultures. So new players can come in and they can understand, oh, I understand who these people are. We also have a lot of like cool hidden little lore bits around the world too that players can find, and they'll learn about that backstory. So if you are someone who knows about like the Titan lore and whatnot, it'll be a fun little thing for you to find. But if you're a new player, you'll be able to understand it. We're really trying to come at it from an angle where it is approachable to new players, but also exciting to veteran players.
I think an interesting, oh, sorry, Dana. I think what an interesting aspect of that too is just the developers who are working on it, right? Because as you know, we have Metzen who's driving the narrative of the World Soul Saga, who is, a long-time player, very old school. But we have such a wide range of developers who are collaborating with him, who also bring in their own voices, and it's just a very process where I feel like together we're building something that will hopefully resonate with everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hugely collaborative and it's just really awesome, honestly.
One of the questions that I also had was when thinking about how the zones are stacked, will there be any teleportation devices from, let's say, from Eskahat, or will we have to always fly from the top all the way down and from down all the way up, or yeah, how is there anything?
We have been having conversations about that. Yeah, I don't know what has currently been decided on at this point, but that definitely is a big thing that's on our mind. Also, when it comes to flying, it's not just going to be like, oh, you're just going to have to land and wait for your vigor to come back as you go up. We've been building a lot of things into the world that really will help make navigating this very vertical experience fun for the players.
And Eastern Plaguelands, Eastern Plaguelands had Lake Meraldar, I believe it's called. Then in Chronicles Volume 2, we discovered that Meraldar was Lorraine's sister and bringer of the light to humanity. Now we find out that a sect of her followers are deep underground on the other side of the world. Could you talk about how you take these small references and make them into a zone-defining culture?
Yeah, I mean, I can touch on this. Yeah, Meraldar is a pretty big part of Hallowfall, which is super awesome. So a lot of our inspiration does come from things that are outside of the in-game, which is really cool. I love that we can bring pieces of that in. When it comes to how we kind of like approach that, in general, like it's a vision that does come from Chris and down to our team. And, these are things that we do converse about. I will say, like, from my experience, it is hard to keep track of everything that kind of comes externally from those different sources. So, we really try to think about that. Like we have those thoughts when we're planning like quest structure and story and whatnot. We're like, what can we pull from? What are little things that we can pull from and we can just expand upon it? And I think that it really leads to us being able to take something that is a small moment, like you said, but make it something that it is so pivotal. And as we go forward, there's likely going to be so much more of that too, like little things that we can kind of grasp from that we can just build out and like push forward on the cultures, which is pretty cool.
What has been some of the key impacts of including world events during Dragonflight? We even had multiple world events in the same zones like Primal Storms, Grand Hunt, Frack Assaults, and so on. And can we expect similar stuff in the War Within?
Yeah, so we are building a bunch of really cool things that are gonna engage in the zone. Some of them are different than those types of things, but we are building different types of gameplay experiences. Some of them, like there's one in the first zone that basically you're running a play, which is super cool. So it's a big multiplayer type of event, and you'll be doing that with a group of people. You're putting on this play. There's all these different objectives that you need to come together and do, and we're looking at little things like that we can kind of put in all the zones to create those interesting moments and yeah, just a different type of gameplay.
I also want to ask about the Hallowfall crystal. I'm not sure how much you can share about it, but it can shift from a yellow to a dark void color where mobs are gonna like change. What are the key impacts on the zone when this happens? Does it allow us to do some specific quests, and does it compare to some of like Legion Assaults, faction incursions from some of the previous expansions, or is it something completely new?
It's something completely new. Definitely like the way that it kind of happens when the crystal changes is the enemies and just mobs in general that are in the world, they become a lot more aggressive. They change behaviors. Yeah, they end up doing more damage and stuff like that. We're still talking internally about like how do we build quests upon this type of experience, but right now like that's kind of the expectation is their behavior just completely changes when the crystal changes.
During the WoWcast, we heard that dungeons will be a bigger part of the campaign because we now have follower dungeons. How does this affect the storytelling and quest design? And is it something we may see for raids as well? Because I know a lot of people, they don't feel comfortable to join in a raid even though it's LFR, but then they miss out on a huge story inside of the raids, which are really cool in my opinion.
Yeah, for right now, we're focused on just making that experience work really well for dungeons. And I definitely hear you when you say that, hey, like, people feel uncomfortable doing raids because of those experiences. So, these are conversations that we are having internally, but for right now, like, our first kind of test of the water is how does this feel in dungeons? How can we make people engage more with those through the follower bots that we have, which are really cool. We want to provide different ways for people to enjoy this content, and this is just the start of that.
Oh, sorry, I also wanted to mention something related to when you mentioned story in the raid. We aren't doing something like follower dungeons where you actually have a bunch of companions and stuff, but we are planning on bringing you into the raid to do have a story moment there as well. So it won't be a raid experience, but yeah, that's something that we really enjoy on the art side too, because we have spend so much time and like love into crafting these like custom spaces that are built with a very specific, story goal. So being able to share that with many players is very cool to us.
Dragonflight introduced a few storylines about characters we know and love, where they were more like focused on the individual characters rather than the grand scale of the story progression. Can we expect more of that in The War Within, maybe with Jaina or Anduin?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. We are going to be experiencing a lot of character development with Anduin and Alleria for sure. There's going to be a lot of moments with them, them just learning who they are, and especially with Anduin. So there will be a lot of those types of things, especially with the people that you meet as you go through the zones.
Could you walk us through the character design process for the new playable race? What were like some of the key considerations in terms of their appearance, armor, and some of the visual effects they're gonna have?
Yeah, so we know that so with Earthen and coming here, that was a key part of the culture that we're discovering, and we already know from prior WoW that they are basically like made of stone, right? They are creatures that haven't been affected by the curse of flesh. So, but we really wanted to make their skin feel unique beyond just that it was stone. And so we put a lot into these rune designs that were on their bodies, as well as, ways that players could customize themselves and make themselves feel, more unique and distinct, like the different gem colors. So there's like a huge variety there that you can like mix and match, like the stone color with the gem color, and even be able to turn different parts of it on and off that might work better for your armor. So I think those are probably the key elements.
Both body types for the new allied race can have beards. Will this feature eventually be available for other races in the War Within? Also, another question, will trolls ever get beards? Because I know people really want trolls to have beards.
Yeah, that's right. So we are very like interested in, right, like when we are able to continue to increase the range of customizations, but no info about trolls and beards for now. But we were excited about being able to give the female Earthen the beards as well, and just like trying to create that like range for the players and able when they customize is really important to us.
In the WoWcast, you actually mentioned some of the inspirations for the new models, like you touched upon Zalatat, some of the inspirations for her design. What were some of the inspirations for Anduin, Alleria, and some of the other key characters in the War Within?
Yeah, so Anduin, he at the moment, we mainly made him, more reflective of what we saw in our pre-rendered cinematic with him and the sword, right? Basically, we wanted to show like the toll that the recent storyline has taken on him, and so mainly just like aging him up a little bit, giving him his haircut, a little bit of dirtiness, and then like his little serape thing. And then with Alleria, she was somebody who, gets like a big revamp because this is someone who she's gone through a very long journey to get to this point, right? She's been traveling through dimensions, and she's always had this struggle of, who she is. And I know in the past we had this thing where we made like a dark version of her, but it was like the exact same armor. And this time we were like, okay, she's truly come to terms with the light and the dark. And so you see that in the, kind of duality of that design. And also we really loved giving her the bow and the this like awesome glove and that she uses like to basically channeling that void power, build like pulling void arrows, from within herself to shoot at her enemies. So yeah, just the really truly powerful character that she is.
I think Danny mentioned a bit about the side quests earlier. Is there any specific side quest that one of you are really excited about for the player base to play through in the world?
There are so many cool ones. Like, I can't even say one specific one because like this team that works on the quest content is so diverse and the ideas they come up with are so cool. Local stories is what we call them internally, but we really like to give our designers freedom on the stories they want to tell. But there's a lot of really cool ones in the Isle of Dorne that really touch on the backstory of Earthen, and some of them are very emotional. Like they go into death, and they talk a lot about like just those grief feelings and whatnot. So definitely a lot of emotion goes into these quests. So yeah, I can't really pick a favorite because there are so many good ones. And then also like just to kind of talk a little bit about like the ones later on, like in Kahet, spiders. There are some quests where we really do go into that like horror theme, and it's really cool. Like just the things that these folks come up with, it's amazing. And yeah, definitely don't want to spoil anything because you need to experience it. They're very awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. Yeah, you
Yay.
said that some of them are like sad. I saw some of the statues also in Isle of Dorne where somebody is next to a grave. It's like very emotional. So like I'm excited to also check out the side quests. This was from a druid fan. And Dragonflight, we saw a lot of cool looking druid forms and warlock forms as well. Will we see any similar updates for other like classes, maybe hunters or mages? I'm a mage main. It would be cool to have the water elemental, maybe customize that one. Or
I too am a mage main, so I also want that. Have you tried out the hero talents, by the way? Like, have you tried the mage hero talents?
I did, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. But I was more focused on the world because of the interviews. I didn't have so much time to look through them.
Definitely recommend going and trying those out. They are super fun, especially the Sun Fury mage. So fun. I love that. But yeah, back to your question. Tina, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
I would say there is nothing, specific plan right now that we can share
Yeah.
for, those customizations. But I do want to add on Danny's thing, which is like very specifically for some of these hero talents. Like with the mage, you get an ability that summons this like phoenix that's like kind of this fiery arcane phoenix as part of the spell, which is awesome. With Warlock, there's a Diabolist, I think it's called, where it summons this like giant pit lord that just comes in and is like, bam. So like really iconic stuff for all of the talents I'm looking forward to.
Hopefully the alpha is up so I can try it.
Yeah, no, I definitely recommend spending some time trying that out, especially as a mage main. You will love them. They're fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. Another long question, let me see. So, Dwarven and Earthen questing has been a core theme in Warcraft, from Dark Iron summoning Ragnaros, right through to a trail of Earthen archaeology leading from Ironban excavation to Ulduar. And the depth of those stories came from quests, with a drive to bring back Warcraft to what some have called a grounded place. What challenges and achievements have there been in making the Earthen of Khaz Algar feel like traditional Dwarven, whilst making them unique addition to the canon?
So one piece there is in making them feel traditional. This was something that we did discuss a lot internally too when making the Earthen, because people have a very have different feelings, right? Like, oh man, how wouldn't it be cool if the Earthen were like X or Y? While some was like, oh, but maybe they could be more high fantasy and less grounded. And so I think that there's an interesting balance there. Um, for instance, one of the ways we wanted to make them feel more traditional was with the folks in the country, right? These, I believe they're called the Unbound.
Yeah. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, and so they're within these little rural villages that feel very quaint, kind of inspired, like I mentioned, inspired by the Wildhammer vibe. And so you just go in there, and it feels like there's the forge. It's a very like intimate, cozy space, and but also there's little details there where it's like, well, but they're earth and they're made of stone. So we want to make sure we don't like they're not eating regular food. So you might notice that like unlike our normal cultures where they're just like, oh, there's like just delicious looking food everywhere for some reason. These guys are finding other ways to rejuvenate themselves, such as in these salt baths that are like built into or sorry, just mineral pools that are built around all these different locations and is an important part of their culture. Like little details like that. And then, of course, Dornegal, the city as a whole, we wanted to make that feel super epic, right? That, the earthen part associated with the Titans that they would have built with their high craftsmanship skill.
Yeah, the city is definitely very impressive. The first time I saw it, it was like the first time seeing Lord of the Rings when you see all those big castles. It felt very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
really
it's definitely cool. And like to kind of touch on what Tina was saying too, the cool thing about Earthen is we're actually kind of splitting them into like three different cultures. So Tina touched on the Unbound, which are more of the country folk. They're the ones that they're kind of more focused on living their life out there. They're more of the free spirit. Then we have the Oathsworn. Those are the ones that are in the city of Dornegal. They're more structured, they have like assignments and they have a duty, and that's kind of like their livelihood. And then we also have the machine speakers, and you do meet one of the machine speakers early on, but as you go down into the ringing deeps, that's where those people are. And you learn about their culture down there, and they're very different as well. So it's kind of cool how we were able to take this one culture but split it into like three different types of people.
Will the War Within have adventure mode after reaching max level, similar to Dragonflight?
I actually don't think we have said anything about that yet, so I'm going to refrain from answering that at the moment.
Nobody has said anything about
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I think. Is there one specific thing or place that one of you or both have worked on that you are super excited for everybody else to check out in the alpha and when the game releases?
For me, it's definitely the delves. I think those are a really interesting thing that we're trying. It's definitely a bed for experimentation. Have you had a chance to run through the delve in the campaign?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I tried all three.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, so like they have different mechanics in them, which is really cool. Like we're trying out a lot of new things in there, trying out these like shorter experiences to just have different ways to tell stories through the game. Like, now we can do campaigns through dungeons and through these delves, and like we're really just trying to think of like how can we freshen the experience for players? How can we drive quests through different types of things and areas and whatnot? And delves is definitely one of those ones that I'm really excited about because I think that a lot of really cool things have come out of it. So for me, that's definitely the area that I want people to check out.
I've been spending this entire time frame of Danny's answers trying to come up with like one specific thing. But really, we did so much this expansion, right? With all the dungeons, like the raid, and then the delves have there are so many delves that are fully built out, these like huge locations. Then like the characters themselves, we put so much into these like custom NPCs that we're excited for y'all to get to know. The zones are also diverse and incredible. Sorry.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to pick one thing for sure.
It's like choosing your favorite child, I guess.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
The final question, is there anything that you want to share? Any final words or something? Yeah, a closing statement.
Oh, closing statement would be good. But one thing that at least I personally haven't talked about yes in the interviews is that I wanted to mention that something that we're adding as an accessibility option, because that's always something that we're continuing to try to do over the course of these expansions. But we have an arachnophobia mode that is built into the UI. So this is the result of, we like consulted some experts, there's games users research as well that we looked into, but we were able to make all of our spider beasts be able to swap into a different creature, like a crab, really. But I remember hearing from players who were like, hey, I basically can't go into town. There's people on spider mounts, right? Like stuff like that. And so I'm really excited to be able to provide this option for players to be able to like experience the war within in a, spider-free way.
Yeah, and I think for me, the warbands, that's a really cool feature that we're adding to just make it easier to have alts. And there's a lot of really cool little quality of life things that you'll be able to experience through warbands. Like all your flight points are unlocked depending on who unlocks them. That's cross account. Transmog, cross account, like mounts, pets, toys, all that stuff. It's awesome. You get a shared bank with all your alts, which is amazing because now you don't have to mail yourself money or things, right? So there's like these little nice quality of life things that I think are just going to make players' lives just so much easier. And I'm really excited about that and kind of how we're going to continue building upon that.
I'm also really pumped, kind of related to players playing delves and being like players who maybe are more solo or aren't into like the 5-man group content or raid content, that they'll be able to experience the joy or disappointment of opening the Great Vault when it resets. For me, that's always been like a really fun part of that weekly loop. So I'm looking forward to that as well, and hope people enjoy it.
Just a quick question that you mentioned the mounts, spider mounts. Will they also be turned into crabs? Or
they will, yeah, they will. So yeah. Luckily, we have a really cool crab mount already, so it'll just look like the players on that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much to the both of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules with everything going on with the alpha and everything else. Yeah, thank you so much. It was nice talking to both of you. And
yeah, likewise. It's our pleasure. Thank you for supporting us and playing the game.
It was my pleasure, definitely.
Great chatting with you. Yeah.